You may know her because she's General Flynn's lawyer. She also has written an incredible book. She's really gone after corrupt prosecutors in America. So first, I want to thank you, Sidney, for joining us today.
Oh, thank you. It's my honor to be with you.
I'm going to turn it over to you.
So we're going to dive right in because this is the #1 question that we've been getting repeatedly from our viewers. And I'm sure you can guess it's about the Anthony Weiner laptop. You mentioned something about how, hardened police, investigators wanted to throw up at viewing the contents. Is there anything that you can elaborate on as to what was on that laptop?
No, I don't know any of the details of it. I know people have various theories about what's on there, but I can't confirm any of that. I'm sure it was horrific child abuse, but I don't know what that was. Right.
You were just relaying that information. Do you think we're going to be seeing any indictments of these elites that seem to be, unaccountable to everyone and all the American people?
I wish I knew. I've become increasingly concerned as time has gone on, particularly with the Klein-Smith plea deal that was just beyond weak, and there's no significant cooperation agreement with it. And then Bannon and Andy Bottolato and those guys who tried to build the wall got indicted when they passed over the hundreds of millions of dollars scam from the Clinton Foundation. So I'm not encouraged at all right now. I'm extremely disappointed, actually. Klein-Smith's plea seems like it was built to withdraw it. I'm very concerned that Judge Boasberg took it since he was on the FISA court and had signed the warrant application that was an issue. I don't think that was appropriate. That's a built-in issue that shouldn't be there. And the other thing was his failure to admit knowing that it was false at the time he did it. In fact, he waffled on that. And that's not acceptable at all. I mean, if I'd been the prosecutor, I would have indicted him as soon as the lawyer put out that statement, because he's looking at substantially greater liability than what he just pled for.
Absolutely. I'm similarly concerned by the lack of sort of action we've seen from Durham, and the fact there's not a cooperation agreement here.
Can you exactly? Sort of I mean, Klein-Smith could have been and should have been indicted a year ago. As soon as Durham got the matter, it had been referred by the Inspector General for the Department of Justice with scads of evidence. The documents themselves show his intent. You don't put a knot in something and believe it's right when the opposite is what's been told to you. So it's inexplicable to me. And why they let him do that is equally inexplicable.
Right. Absolutely. I mean, without, sounding too dramatic, we have to ask, is justice dead in America when we can't hold prosecutors and, government officials accountable? I mean, there's things like child porn that are found on government officials' computers that go unprosecuted. And when we have corrupt prosecutors, as we've seen in your case with General Flynn, what can we is it fair to assume that we have a problem with our justice system in America?
We have a huge problem with our justice system in America. The double standard that all Americans see is completely unacceptable and gives no one any faith in our institutions. And I think Bill Barr is an honorable man who wants to restore that, but we're nowhere near where we ought to be by this time of his tenure.
Mm-hmm.
Between the Bannon indictment, nothing done on the Clinton Foundation, the sweetheart deal for Mr. Klein-Smith, and the fact that nobody else has been indicted when there's evidence in the public sector enough to indict many of them. It's inexplicable to me and completely unacceptable. I'm extremely disappointed.
Do you think that anybody's ever going to go after reading all of Hillary's emails on her BlackBerry, the BlackBerry ones that were found on Weiner's laptop?
I don't know. The last I heard, which was about 6 months ago, nobody'd even found it yet. So I don't know where it is. It should be in the vault at Quantico, if nothing else. There has to be a copy of it somewhere and on the NSA database, if nowhere else. So it shouldn't be that hard to find the laptop and or who destroyed it. and all the
Yep.
messages should be on the NSA database, even if it was destroyed. So there again, it's completely inexplicable. And you mentioned the failure to prosecute prosecutors. One of the things I noticed in one of the IG reports, not one of the big ones, but one of the little ones that didn't even attract any attention, was that there was somebody high up in the Department of Justice that was let go because he had porn on his computer. I don't know that it was child porn, but if it had been Joe Blow or somebody they didn't like, they would have been prosecuted for it. And he was just let go from his job.
Right. I think the American people, this is really dangerous to our democracy because we're becoming more aware of the inherent corruption within our, justice system. If people lose faith in the ability for these elites that are running our country to do their jobs and to do it free of corruption and conflict of interest, I mean, we could see, a big problem in our country, a violent upheaval. That's something that concerns me as a citizen. Is that something that concerns you as well?
Yes. I mean, I certainly hope our patriots never turn to violence, but the system has got to be fixed. Everybody knows it's broken, and not nearly enough is being done to fix it. For whether it's Congress or the U.S. Attorney in the District of Columbia, Jesse Liu, who let scads of egregious violations go by. There was the Yuan brothers who were stealing millions from Congress, blackmailing congressmen, had access to the classified information of at least 40 Congress people, mainly, well, actually all Democrats. Nothing was done about that. One Yuan brother got a slap on the wrist and was sent out of the country, never to return. But they know that classified information was sucked out by him and sent to Pakistan and God only knows where and sold for what and to whom. And then the whole thing of the charges against Mr. Wolf, the main staff member on the Senate Select Committee for Intelligence, who leaked the 82 pages of the Carter Page FISA application on March 17, straight out of the skiff, where he just met with Mr. Senator, Warner. Yeah, Senator Warner.
Yeah.
And also probably Senator Burr and other members of the Senate Intelligence Committee. Well, Wolf got another slap on the wrist when he threatened to subpoena all the members of the Senate Intelligence Committee to testify in his defense. So I would venture to say that Mr. Wolf did not leak that, just absolutely on his own, that either at least two of the senators knew he was going to leak it or told him to leak it.
Yeah.
So nothing happened to Warner and Burr. The whole thing was swept under the rug by Jesse Liu and the U.S. Attorney's Office in the District of Columbia again. Now, of course, she's gone. That's great.
Yeah,
We've got a new U.S. attorney there. But still, nothing happened on all of that.
And I feel like people like Senator Burr have been sort of the people holding back a lot of real answers from the American people. What can we do to hold them accountable beyond just, getting them kicked out of office by electing better people?
It's next to impossible because only the Department of Justice could prosecute them, or the U.S. Attorney in the District of Columbia, which is essentially part of the Department of Justice.
Yeah.
Without a Department of Justice that's really willing to prosecute the bad actors in the government itself, we're all just helpless.
And is that the same sort of case with, let's say, Southern District of New York, who sort of turned into a rogue office that goes after political prosecutions against Republicans? Is it basically the answer is until the larger DOJ does something about it, nothing's going to happen?
Yes, and the president's got to appoint United States attorneys with the guts to do what needs to be done, including cleaning out those offices. We really need some greater turnover. There should never be career prosecutors. This business of being a lifelong prosecutor, well, if you're a hammer, all you see is nails. In fact, I think any prosecutor should be required to work on the defense side for at least 5 years. And I don't think anybody should ever be appointed to the bench straight from the U.S. Attorney's Office. That happens a lot. But then you wind up with judges on the bench who are really prosecutors. And they haven't had any experience representing defendants or practicing law in the real world.
Absolutely.
One thing we might ought to do is make people switch between the U.S. attorney's offices and the federal public defender's offices.
That would be interesting. And I think it would weed out a lot of really nasty people from the job who are in the prosecutor side of things for the wrong reasons.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think 15 years is long enough to be in any one job in the government or to be on the government payroll at all, whether you're an administrative assistant or whatever. It's just not good to stay in the government anybody's entire career.
Yep.
Absolutely. I think this new age of digital information requires higher accountability, more oversight, more transparency. And the American people are pleading for that to be part of our new justice system. There should be these officials, limited terms, conflicts of interest free, more oversight of these people that have lots of concentrated power. I wanted you to talk about that, about, specifically like judges and prosecutors, the power structure there, and who's really able to hold them accountable at the end of the day. And when they're used for political purposes, what recourse do people have?
Well, the only recourse to remove a federal judge is to be impeached by Congress. That happened one time that I know of, for a judge from Florida who had accepted a bribe or was offered a bribe. There was I don't remember the exact details of the case, but he was impeached or resigned at the threat of impeachment. And guess where he is now? He's in Congress.
Crazy.
Unbelievable.
Crazy.
Yep.
I would ask you this question, and you can say pass, because I understand this one you may not be able to answer, but were Flynn's original attorneys working with the government in your mind to get a result that the government wanted, so they were not working in the best interest of their client? And will they, in your mind, or should they face repercussions at the bar?
His prior attorneys at Covington and Burling were severely conflicted, to the point that it was a non-consentable conflict, according to our ethics experts, because they had done the Foreign Agent Registration Act filing that special counsel then said contained false statements. So once special counsel raised with them that conflict of interest, it's rather dramatic how the tables turned in the background that we discovered as we went through all the documents. And they should have withdrawn from representation of Flynn by early August of 2017 at the latest, and just simply not proceeded to do anything in the case further. But it was clear they did not want to lose this client for whatever reason. And they just didn't do what they should have done in multiple ways. They were far too deferential to the government. I can't say they were working with the government, but I've certainly never seen defense attorneys any more deferential than these people were. And they never filed a Brady motion or took any affirmative steps. In fact, the docket sheet when we took over the case, I think, was maybe 2 pages long, and now it's about 100 pages. It's a rather large difference in litigation style.
And what do you think the next steps look like for General Flynn right now? And as a follow-up to that, I would also ask, when will General Flynn be able to speak to the people?
Well, any minute now, we're going to get a decision from the DC Circuit. The entire court sat what's called en banc, meaning all the active judges on the court sat to decide about the writ of mandamus we'd gotten and an order to Judge Sullivan to dismiss the case. They don't want to do that. That was clear from the argument. Of course, the court is about 7-3 Democrats with 3 Obama appointees, 2 of whom you should listen to the oral argument and make your own judgment as to the way they treated me and the Solicitor General. It was rather remarkable. And there were multiple interesting attitudes from multiple of the other judges as well, to the point I left the argument feeling embarrassed for the federal judiciary And I have done literally hundreds of arguments in federal courts of appeals and never experienced anything of that tone or tenor or the kinds of questions that were asked and how they were asked.
Well, you bring up something really important, is we've seen something that used to hide in the shadows come out into the public now. I know that in the past there was still an issue with federal judges, sort of grandstanding at certain points in time, but we've seen this new wave of grandstanding that is unlike what we've seen in the past. It's very public, it's very blatant, and it's just in your face. We are part of this party and we're going to rule in this party's favor no matter what on every issue. And it's not something where we're seeing the rule of law be held up, we're seeing partisanship be held up. And that, is something that is incredibly damaging because it's a rubber band effect. It happens on one side. Guess what? Eventually it's going to happen on the other side and it's going to snap back and hit them. And that's something that concerns me just as an American. Outside of political ideology, there's no secret I'm a Republican, but, outside of political ideology, just entirely on the basis of freedom and our Constitution, it concerns me that is what our federal judiciary is turning into. So what do we do? Is that, again, a DOJ issue? Like, who's going to fix this and how is it going to stop?
Well, you're right. It's absolutely terrifying. I mean, for decades now, I have counted on the federal judiciary to do it right and get it right. Certainly trial courts make errors, but the courts of appeals, generally in my rather long experience now, have done the right thing and gotten it right, or at least if they didn't, it never felt like it was because of politics. It might be because a judge misunderstood or misapplied the law or misunderstood the facts or something, but I've never seen anything like we've experienced in the last 2 years. And one of the purposes, I think, of the Flynn case, as I told Lou Dobbs, God works in mysterious ways. And he is using the Flynn case to educate millions of people, not just here, but around the world, on the absolutely clear problems and politicization of our federal judiciary. You're right. It's a terrible threat to the rule of law. The president is going to have to be very careful about the judges he selects. I would and have strongly encouraged that they depart from purely members of the Federalist Society or those recommended by the Federalist Society, because as good as it is, anytime you go to big firm lawyers to appoint to the bench, they come replete with connections to corporate America and all kinds of people in the swamp. And that's not necessarily the best federal judge. I think we need more people on the bench from small firms who come straight out of the practice of law. I disagree with the appointment of professional judges. I think we need a Supreme Court justice or two who did not sit on the circuit bench or even the district court bench. The more varied real life experience they have, the better. And I also think we need a term limit on judges. Not that I disagree with life tenure particularly, but I think by age 70 or 75, they should be required to retire.
Yep, absolutely.
I think that's a really good point. You've been so brave to, in your books and just, your interviews, be so transparent with the American people. Do you ever worry about repercussions on your end as far as, your future in practicing? Or is there a different, future? I mean, could you consider running for office? Any of those things? What does the future for you look like?
I rarely look ahead. I focus on what I'm doing at the time and what needs to be done, and just expect God to point me in the direction He wants me to go. And that's worked really well all my life. God didn't give me a spirit of fear. So I just worry about trying to speak the truth and doing the right thing by everybody I come in contact with and proceed onward.
Well, you have a lot of fans. Let me tell you what, we put out I always ask our viewers, does anybody have questions? And I've never seen marriage proposals and people saying that, like, this person's just an absolute American hero, blah, blah, blah. And I already had a lot of respect for you, but seeing the multiple marriage proposals was something I was not expecting.
Well, I am single. Send them on.
I'll forward their information. What I wanted to ask, and this is sort of a weird switch gears from that because that was funny, but Judge Sullivan, and you may not want to answer anything you don't want to answer, just say pass, because I understand the case is very sensitive. But with Judge Sullivan, is there any thought that there may have been communication with a member of the Democratic Party during the course of General Flynn's case?
I don't know what happened to Judge Sullivan, but he was the judicial hero of License to Lie. I bragged on him for doing the right thing in the Stevens case for 6 years now, all across the country. So the biggest irony and the greatest surprise to me was when Emmett Sullivan, the judge I've touted as being the guy who would stand up for Brady and making sure the defendant got the evidence that shows he's innocent, wrote a 92-page scathing opinion denying me every single piece of Brady evidence we had identified in the case, including the actual evidence the government itself had identified as exculpatory, but only given me a summary of. I was flabbergasted. I mean, I was always confident we'd win this case, but that's because I thought Judge Sullivan would give us Brady and it would push it to the point where the government would have to move to dismiss it. So thank God Attorney General Barr appointed Mr. Jensen to look at the evidence himself. And then the government and the Department of Justice had the fortitude and the decency and the sense of ethics to do the right thing here and move to dismiss it themselves. That's what really needed to be done, because that's the only way to restore integrity to the Department of Justice, is for it to stand up for justice instead of convictions.
Well, I can tell you this. I hope that we're a good luck charm for you with this decision that you're waiting on, because when General Flynn's brother came on our show, it was literally right at the end of our show, he got the news, and we ended the show. He got the news that charges were being dropped by the Department of Justice. So hopefully something good happens today for you too.
Oh, wow. Yes. Y'all are welcome to be my good luck charm.
So, I did want to ask, we have these other cases. There's one, that's a good example. I'd say Cheryl Atkinson, I'm sure you're familiar with her, where they haven't gotten justice for what the Obama DOJ did to them. What do you think is going on with that? Like, what needs to be done? If you could make any change that you could possibly dream of in government, what would you do to change things so that people start seeing the fruits of justice that they should be seeing?
Well, for one thing, I would instruct that Cheryl Atkinson be given all the evidence that relates to her case. The fact that the government is still stonewalling, that's absurd. I don't understand that at all. And the Civil Rights Division needs to be ramped up to protect the civil rights of everyone whose liberties are being horribly trampled right now by everything from Southwest Airlines, who threw me off the plane 2 weeks ago because I didn't pull my mask back up fast enough while I was drinking, to corporations that are using the COVID incident to deny all manner and means of customer service. And becoming, just mask Nazis, when even the box that they pull the mask out of says it doesn't protect you from COVID.
Now you're going to get Landon going.
Oh, yeah, you're going to get me going on that. But I have to ask you, do you really think, do you think that they knew who you were, or do you think it was really just about the mask, that Southwest Airlines incident?
No, they knew who I was. They have been, the flight attendants on Southwest Airlines have been stalking me for the last 8 weeks or so on my flights. I was flying at least 2-3 times a week, and it's been absolutely unreal.
I bet they didn't even get you any peanuts or pretzels, nothing.
Oh, no, they literally made me leave the plane.
Unbelievable. This it's so toxic, this climate, and now that the masks, what they're doing with that is really sad. What's happening to our society and people on these power trips. We have to restore individual liberties and stand up for it, even if it's a mask, even whatever it is. We have to really examine it from that lens. I think it's so important. I'm so glad you brought that up.
Right. You're right. It's petty people on power trips. That's all it's about. And at Southwest Airlines, for one thing, I knew the founder of Southwest Airlines when he was a lawyer in San Antonio, Texas. He was Mr. Freedom. And Southwest used to be the most fun airline to fly. Now it's like being put in a casket. It's ridiculous.
How are all of the COVID lockdown measures sort of in your eyes as someone in the legal world? How does it make you feel seeing all of these sort of overreaching mandates from governors? Is this something that gives you pause about what the future of America looks like? And I'm not even talking from a health perspective, because people can have arguments about health being this or that. I'm talking about the idea that the government can mandate that you wear something on your face, that they mandate what can be injected in your body, all these things. That's really more so where I have an issue is, you can have the health conversation, have the argument, and I think most people would do whatever the science, is saying, oh, this would be healthier. But regardless, the government mandating, like, how do you see that?
It's completely unacceptable. I mean, this country was built on a culture of freedom, individual freedom. The Constitution and the Bill of Rights were created to protect the individual from the government. We've lost all that in a span of a few months because of this ridiculous COVID virus that is no worse than the flu, and its death count may be less. And it makes no sense whatsoever. We cannot protect each other, but to a certain extent, from germs that we can't even see. We've got to learn to live with it and use common sense. If Donald Trump weren't president, no mention would have been made of it. It would have been, oh, we're having a really bad flu season, like the H1N1 with Obama. It was no big deal whatsoever, just a rough flu season.
Yep. During H1N1, I swear,
here we've destroyed trillions of dollars worth of wealth. They want to wipe out the middle class and render more people dependent on the government so the Democrats can come in and run everything. It's all about their outrageous lust for power, their obsession with power, and the money that it brings from their global deals and kickbacks and frauds. It's got to stop if we're going to save the United States of America. And we must save it. We're the beacon of freedom for the world. We're the only country people die trying to get to for that freedom. We have to protect and reinstate the culture of freedom in this country.
Yeah.
Everybody should be informed of the facts of whatever the problem is, the disease or whatever, and allowed to make their own individual decisions as to how best to protect themselves. The vulnerable need to stay home. Yes, we need to take special care of the elderly and people who are at high risk, but the rest of us can make our own decisions about whether to wear a mask or not. And if the mask on the other folks in Southwest Airlines works, then they don't need to worry about mine.
That's right.
Yep. I want to quote Maximo Alvarez from this week. He was at the RNC. He's a Cuban refugee. He said, "There is nowhere else to go. If freedom falls in America, there is nowhere else to go." And, as the son of a Cuban refugee myself, that really stuck with me because that's something that it runs in my DNA on a daily basis. It's why I risked my entire career in Hollywood directing big celebrities, is that ran in me. I knew that if freedom falls here, there's nowhere else to go for our children and the next generation and the next generation. And the lies that are being sold to young people right now are the same lies that were sold to young people and romanticized in communist Cuba. So, and it's what we're seeing in the streets with the riots and the looting and the violence. It's the same sort of romanticized violence that happened in Cuba during the so-called revolution. This is our last stand in a lot of ways. And I think it's so important for Americans to stand up, make their voices heard. I'm sort of interested to find out from your perspective. I'm of the opinion that the silent majority cannot afford any longer to be silent. Do you think I'm wrong, or do you think that the silent majority does need to, when able, to speak up at this point in time and say, hey, we're here, we exist, and we are going to fight for America?
I think you're exactly right. We cannot afford to be silent any longer. And I'm convinced there are more of us than there are of them. And I would encourage everyone to read a beautiful post that was on the conservative Treehouse yesterday about we are Fort McHenry. We are in Fort McHenry right now, fighting what could be the last battle. And we have got to do everything in our power to make sure President Trump wins, and then to demand that he reinstate all the freedoms that we had before this virus hit and never let this happen to our country again. And stop all the violence. If it takes use of the Insurrection Act to stop it, stop it. It needs to be stopped right now. It's doing nobody any good. It's nothing but destructive, creates more hate, more divisiveness, more isolation, just like the masks do. That's the purpose of all of it.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. I agree 1,000%. You couldn't have said that better. Isolating people. I mean, you even go down to how we're socializing our children. We're socializing kids to be afraid of each other. I had, even our own kids who know, they have very freedom loving parents. One of our kids the other day said to me, so-and-so they touched my shoulders. And I was like, and they were like, oh, I don't know. I guess I thought that they weren't supposed to because of the virus. And I was like, no, they were just saying hi to you, and we've socialized kids to that, even when they have parents who are like, don't react that way. They're still being socialized that way by society through the messaging around COVID. So, you look at the destruction we're doing long term.
Yeah, the media is just nonstop with it. It's absolutely outrageous. I'm shaking the hand of anybody who wants to shake my hand. I will hug anybody who wants me to hug them. And I'm going to keep doing it.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I'm so glad that you're able to join us. We're having a freedom rally in Tennessee. I encourage everybody, to start joining with other patriots and making your voices heard and known. And, Sidney, you're such a rock star for, in your field, but also, as American, you've inspired us, you've awakened us with this whole case, how you've handled it. So thank you so much for your service and for joining our show today and talking with us so candidly.
Oh, thank you all for everything that you're doing too. It takes every one of us to do whatever we can.
Thank you so much.
Thanks so much.
We love you, and we'll keep amplifying any message to the case. And let's hope that we're a good luck charm today for General Flynn.
I hope so too. And follow me on Twitter at Sidney Powell, #1.
Absolutely. And if you don't know how to spell that for some reason, it's scrolling at the bottom of the screen here. So thank you guys. Have a great day. Thank you for joining us. And again, so thankful Sidney was able to join us today.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Bye,
Thank
Sidney.
you, Sidney.
Bye. Keep up the good work, guys.
Thank you so much.
Too. Bye-bye.